Inside a bustling downtown courtroom in a mid-sized American town, tension filled the air as reporters, spectators, and legal professionals packed every seat. The stage was set for a high-stakes legal battle, with Judge Martha Campbell, a seasoned magistrate known for her unwavering authority, presiding over the trial of David Hollis, a prominent businessman accused of embezzlement. As the courtroom prepared to resume proceedings, chaos erupted when the heavy oak doors creaked open. At first, the soft padding of paws on the tiled floor went unnoticed, but then, a stray dog, matted, thin, yet moving with an unmistakable confidence, barked loudly, instantly capturing everyone's attention. The animal trotted to the center of the room, sat down, and stared around as if it had a message to deliver. The silence that followed was almost tangible. Even Judge Campbell paused, her eyes narrowing in confusion at the unexpected visitor. The bailiff, initially moving to remove the dog, was halted as the animal barked a second, louder time. Its gaze fixed on David Hollis, causing a ripple of unease across the courtroom. Whispers filled the air as speculation ran rampant. What was this stray dog doing here, and why was it so intent on being in that very moment? Then came a third bark, echoing like a command, and the dog settled down again. In that silent, charged moment, all eyes shifted to the small rusted key dangling from the dog's collar, catching the light and reflecting it onto the astonished faces in the room. The bailiff, with a trembling voice, announced the discovery of the key, prompting Judge Campbell to lean forward and ask, "What does this key unlock?" As the courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the defense dismissed the event as a stunt, while the prosecution's eyes gleamed with determination. With calm resolve, the prosecutor examined the key, revealing that its emblem matched the logo of a local private storage facility, rumored to have been used by Mr. Hollis to hide critical evidence. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room, shaking even the seemingly unflappable defendant. Judge Campbell, balancing authority with curiosity, allowed the prosecution to move forward. The atmosphere grew electric with tension, every listener holding their breath as the stray dog remained seated, its purpose fulfilled, for now. The key, a silent herald of secrets yet to be uncovered, symbolized the turning point in this high-stakes battle for justice. Thus began an unexpected twist in the case that had gripped the town, setting the stage for revelations that would challenge perceptions and redefine the trial's course. In the immediate aftermath of that shocking moment, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted from stunned silence to a low, simmering murmur of anticipation. Every eye was fixed on the tiny rusted key that had appeared as if by magic on the stray dog's collar. The key, unassuming yet charged with mystery, had become the catalyst for a dramatic twist in an already high-profile case. As the courtroom slowly regained its composure, a palpable sense of urgency and curiosity filled the room, one that promised to unravel secrets that had been hidden for months. Outside the imposing walls of the courthouse, the crisp autumn air carried whispers of speculation. Reporters hustled to gather every fragment of the story, while citizens debated the implications of the key in hushed conversations on sidewalks and in local coffee shops. The revelation had ignited a spark that threatened to engulf the town in a storm of legal and moral reckoning. For hours after the interruption, the trial paused as Judge Martha Campbell deliberated over the sudden turn of events. The judge, renowned for her fair yet firm approach, recognized that this development could not be brushed aside. With measured authority, she granted a brief recess, instructing the court clerks to secure the key as evidence while the prosecution and defense regrouped. In a private conference room just off the courtroom, Prosecutor Elaine Morgan and her investigative team pored over every detail of the case. Elaine, whose career had been built on her incisive intuition and relentless pursuit of truth, immediately sensed that the key was more than a mere coincidence. Her mind raced back to months of painstaking work. Every interview, every document, every whispered rumor had pointed toward the existence of a clandestine storage facility. The emblem etched faintly onto the key matched the insignia found on a series of documents obtained through a discreet tip. It was a clue, a long-awaited piece of the puzzle that could expose the secrets David Hollis had so desperately tried to hide. As the prosecution assembled its case, Elaine reflected on her own journey. A path marked by dedication, ethical rigor, and a refusal to back down in the face of powerful opposition. In her voice, calm yet resolute, she recorded her thoughts. into her digital recorder. This key is our turning point. It not only substantiates the allegations against Hollis, but also opens a door into a world of evidence that could finally hold him accountable for his crimes. Every detail matters, and this emblem connects him to a network of deceit that has undermined the trust of the community. Meanwhile, the defense team, led by a sharp-witted attorney named Charles Bennett, scrambled to mount a counter-narrative. Bennett, known for his charismatic courtroom presence and eloquent speeches, argued that the key's appearance was nothing more than a bizarre coincidence, a stunt orchestrated by overzealous members of the prosecution. He insisted that attributing intentionality to a stray animal was absurd and that the evidence was circumstantial at best. His voice, measured yet impassioned, filled the room as he prepared his rebuttal for the resumption of the trial. Back in the courthouse, Judge Campbell convened a meeting with both sides. Her measured tone resonated through the hall as she explained, "Given the circumstances, we will adjourn for a brief recess to allow the proper examination of this new piece of evidence. I ask that all parties remain respectful and that speculation be limited to fact. The integrity of these proceedings must be preserved above all." Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement, but underneath the calm exterior, tension and anticipation continued to build. Outside, the city seemed to hold its breath. News outlets quickly spread the story, and social media exploded with theories. Some claimed the key was part of a larger conspiracy involving offshore accounts and fraudulent storage facilities, while others speculated it was a message from an unlikely source, a stray animal with a mission to reveal corruption. In small-town diners and bustling urban cafes alike, citizens debated the implications of the key and its potential to reshape the narrative of a case that had already captivated the public. As dusk settled, a team of detectives arrived at the private storage facility linked to the key's emblem. The building, a modest yet foreboding structure nestled on the outskirts of town, exuded an air of neglect and secrecy. The detectives, led by Captain Richard Lawson, a veteran of the force with a reputation for meticulous investigations, approached the facility with a mixture of caution and determination. Lawson recalled the case files that had implicated the facility in a web of financial misdeeds, and he knew that time was of the essence. Inside the storage facility, dim corridors and dusty shelves bore silent witness to years of forgotten possessions. Every creak of the old wood and every echo of footsteps added to the facility's eerie ambiance. The detectives split into teams, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they scoured every corner for evidence. It was here that the narrative took on new layers of complexity. Hidden behind stacks of old documents and neglected boxes, Lawson and his team discovered a trove of files that corroborated the allegations against David Hollis. Financial ledgers, emails, and contracts painted a damning picture of embezzlement and fraudulent schemes that had been meticulously concealed. Back in the courthouse, as night fell over the city, the trial resumed with renewed fervor. The key was presented as physical evidence, and its connection to the storage facility became the focal point of a dramatic courtroom showdown. In a voice that blended calm authority with the weight of revelation, Judge Campbell recounted the new findings to the assembled audience. This key, simple as it may appear, has unlocked evidence that directly implicates Mr. Hollis in the misappropriation of funds from local charities. The discovery at the storage facility has revealed documents that could very well prove a deliberate scheme of corruption. Prosecutor Morgan's words echoed with conviction as she laid out the evidence for the jury and the public. For months, we have followed a trail of deceit that led us to this very moment. The documents we have secured not only reveal a network of financial improprieties, but also show a deliberate attempt to cover up criminal activities. The key, an emblem of truth, has provided us with undeniable proof of Mr. Hollis's involvement in these illicit transactions. In contrast, Charles Bennett, representing the defense, argued passionately that the evidence was tainted by coincidence and conjecture. Your Honor, while the discovery of these documents is indeed unexpected, we must remember that correlation does not imply causation. The presence of this key on a stray dog is a natural occurrence, a random event that does not, in itself, prove any intentional wrongdoing by my client. His tone, though measured, could not fully dispel the rising tide of public opinion that was beginning to sway in favor of the prosecution. As the proceedings unfolded, the narrative deepened with accounts from key witnesses and experts. One of the facility's former employees, a soft-spoken woman named Rebecca Miles, took the stand. In a measured tone that betrayed both regret and resolve, she recounted her experience. "I worked at the facility for over a decade, and I knew that certain files were hidden away. Files that I was told never to discuss. I always felt there was something off about the way things were managed here. When I heard rumors that Mr. Hollis was involved, I never imagined the truth would come out in such a dramatic fashion." Her testimony, delivered with quiet determination, lent an air of authenticity to the prosecution's case. Every detail was brought to life with vivid imagery. The narrator recalled the determined glances exchanged between Prosecutor Morgan and Captain Lawson, the subtle shifts in body language that spoke louder than words, and the haunting echoes of footsteps in a neglected storage facility that held the secrets of a corrupt empire. The voiceover painted a picture of a community on the brink of transformation, a community demanding transparency and integrity from its leaders. Meanwhile, in a series of behind-the-scenes developments, new leads began to emerge. Anonymous tips and previously overlooked documents started to surface, each adding a layer of complexity to the case. Local law enforcement, buoyed by the mounting evidence, expanded their investigation beyond the storage facility. They began to uncover a network of shell companies, offshore bank accounts, and secret meetings that linked Mr. Hollis to a vast web of financial fraud. The narrator explained how these revelations were not just about one man's misdeeds, but were symptomatic of a systemic failure that had allowed corruption to fester unchecked. As the days turned into weeks, the trial morphed into a landmark case, one that would set a precedent for how financial crimes were investigated and prosecuted. The courtroom became a stage upon which the ideals of justice, accountability, and truth were fiercely contested. In a moment of introspection, the narrator reflected on the symbolic power of the stray dog and its key. It was a reminder that sometimes truth arrives from the most unexpected sources, a truth that, no matter how hidden, demands to be uncovered. Late one evening, as the courtroom lights dimmed and the case files were spread out on polished mahogany tables, a breakthrough came in the form of an encrypted digital ledger. Forensic accountants discovered irregularities in the transactions that pointed directly to funds siphoned off from charitable donations. This new piece of evidence not only corroborated the physical documents found at the storage facility, but also hinted at an even larger conspiracy, one that implicated individuals far beyond Mr. Hollis himself. The narrator's tone grew more urgent as this revelation was laid out. Every piece of the puzzle, from the mysterious key to the hidden ledger, converges on a single undeniable truth. Corruption has a way of revealing itself, no matter how deeply it is buried. In the days that followed, courtroom sessions became a battleground of ideas. The prosecution meticulously presented each document and cross-examined witnesses with unwavering precision. The defense, on the other hand, sought to undermine the credibility of the evidence by pointing to discrepancies and arguing that the chain of custody had been compromised. The narrator described these exchanges with a clarity that left no room for ambiguity. In a trial where every word and every gesture carried the weight of justice, both sides fought not only for a favorable verdict, but for the very soul of the community's trust in its institutions. Amid this legal warfare, personal stories emerged that further humanized the drama. Rebecca Miles, the former facility employee, became the unlikely hero of the narrative. Her courage in coming forward, despite the potential risks to her livelihood, resonated with the public. In her testimony, she recounted moments of quiet rebellion, instances when she had secretly documented irregularities and discrepancies, knowing that one day, the truth might be needed to bring accountability. The narrator's voice softened as these moments were recounted, capturing the bittersweet nature of sacrifice in the pursuit of justice. In parallel, a side investigation revealed that the stray dog, now affectionately dubbed Lucky by some in the media, had been a regular presence near the courthouse for weeks prior to the incident. A local animal shelter's records indicated that Lucky had been wandering the streets for quite some time, a survivor of circumstances beyond his control. The narrator pondered the symbolism. In a world where the marginalized are often overlooked, even a stray dog can become an unlikely guardian of truth, a beacon that shines a light into the darkest corners of deceit. This reflection was not only a commentary on the case, but a broader meditation on how truth sometimes emerges from the least expected places. By now, the trial had evolved into a saga that transcended the boundaries of the courtroom. It was a narrative of redemption and reckoning, a story in which every participant, from the determined prosecutor to the unlikely canine messenger, played a vital role in the unfolding drama. The narrator captured this transformation with a sweeping overview. In the interplay between light and shadow, truth emerges not as a single moment, but as a culmination of countless whispers, hidden clues, and acts of quiet bravery. Each element, however small, contributed to a mosaic that revealed the undeniable reality of corruption and the relentless human spirit determined to overcome it. As the investigation pressed on and the trial entered its final stages, the stakes could not have been higher. The community, once divided by skepticism and indifference, found itself united in a collective call for accountability. Public rallies, town hall meetings, and even informal gatherings in local diners echoed with the same message, that no one was above the law, and that every misdeed, however carefully concealed, would eventually come to light. In a climactic series of courtroom sessions that spanned several days, the narrative reached its zenith. Every witness, every piece of evidence, and every carefully documented transaction was meticulously scrutinized. The defense's arguments, though forceful and eloquent, gradually lost their potency in the face of overwhelming proof. The digital ledger, the hidden documents from the storage facility, and even the symbolic appearance of the stray dog all converged into a compelling tapestry of accountability. The narrator's voice rang out with a blend of triumph and solemnity. In the pursuit of truth, every hidden corner was illuminated, every shadow dispelled by the light of justice. The evidence, undeniable and profound, left no room for doubt. In a final, poignant moment, as Judge Campbell prepared to deliver her verdict, the courtroom fell into a heavy, expectant silence. The judge, whose eyes had witnessed the full spectrum of human nature in her long career, spoke slowly and deliberately, after careful consideration of all the evidence, and in light of the revelations that have emerged from every corner of this investigation. I find that the actions of Mr. Hollis have not only betrayed the trust of this community, but have also undermined the very principles of justice that bind us together. Her words, measured and resolute, carried the weight of a verdict that resonated far beyond the walls of the courtroom. As the courtroom slowly emptied, and the echoes of that historic day lingered in the air, the narrator's final words offered both reflection and hope. In every act of defiance against injustice, in every unexpected messenger that brings light to the darkest secrets, there lies the promise of a better tomorrow. And so, the story of this trial will be remembered not only for its dramatic turns and hard-won revelations, but for the enduring reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, truth finds a way. The courtroom was filled with an unyielding intensity as the proceedings resumed following the recess. Every seat was occupied by individuals eager to absorb every detail of the unfolding events. Judge Martha Campbell, her expression firm yet thoughtful, re-entered the courtroom with a measured stride, her presence immediately re-establishing order and gravity. David Hollis sat at the defendant's table, his eyes betraying anxiety as he glanced nervously toward the pile of evidence that had disrupted his carefully constructed image of invulnerability. Prosecutor Elaine Morgan stepped forward with a calm determination that resonated throughout the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "the evidence we have presented thus far points to a pattern of deliberate deception and misappropriation. The discovery of the key on that stray dog, though unexpected, has unveiled a trail that leads directly to Mr. Hollis's hidden financial deceptions." Her tone was unyielding, each word deliberate, setting the stage for the next phase of the trial. The defense, led by Charles Bennett, wasted no time in challenging every piece of evidence brought forth. "Your Honor," Bennett argued, his voice rising with restrained fury, "the presence of that key is nothing more than a random occurrence, a freak event that has been blown out of proportion by a prosecution eager to find scandal where none exists. Correlation does not imply causation, and this case is riddled with coincidences that do not amount to proof of criminal behavior." His words, delivered with a practiced eloquence, aimed to sow seeds of reasonable doubt among the jurors. As the trial progressed, the focus shifted to a series of detailed witness testimonies that shed light on the inner workings of the private storage facility. One by one, Witnesses took the stand, each contributing a piece to the growing mosaic of evidence. Rebecca Miles, the former employee of the storage facility, recounted her experiences with quiet conviction. "I was employed there for over 10 years," she stated, her voice steady despite the weight of her revelations. "I noticed discrepancies in the files and documents, hidden away in locked cabinets and behind false walls. I was instructed not to mention these irregularities, but I always suspected that something illegal was taking place. The documents I later discovered confirmed my suspicions, linking the facility directly to Mr. Hollis's financial maneuvers." Her testimony was precise, detailing the secret compartments, the unusual security measures, and the hurried disposal of documents that had once been the backbone of a covert operation. In another section of the courtroom, a forensic accounting expert, Dr. Benjamin Carter, presented his findings with scientific precision. "Upon analyzing the digital ledger recovered from the storage facility, we identified a series of transactions that deviated significantly from standard business practices," Dr. Carter explained, his voice imbued with the authority of rigorous study. "There were transfers of funds that were routed through multiple shell companies, designed to obscure the true origin of the money. These transactions, when cross-referenced with the physical documents, create an unmistakable pattern of embezzlement and financial manipulation. The key, though small and seemingly insignificant, ultimately provided the breakthrough we needed to trace these transactions to their source." His detailed explanation, replete with references to specific ledger entries and dates, left the courtroom absorbing every technical nuance of the case. Throughout the proceedings, Judge Campbell maintained a steady command of the courtroom, interjecting only when necessary to ensure that the debate remained focused on the facts. Her eyes, ever watchful, occasionally met those of Hollis, whose discomfort was evident with every new revelation. At one point, when the defense objected to the inclusion of certain digital evidence, the judge calmly reviewed the objections before ruling that all evidence previously collected would remain admissible. "We are here to seek the truth," she reminded everyone. "Let us not be swayed by theatrics but by the incontrovertible facts presented before us." Charles Bennett, the defense attorney, continued to press the idea that the evidence was circumstantial. In his closing arguments, he asserted, "My client stands accused based on a series of unfortunate coincidences. The appearance of the stray dog, the key found on its collar, the documents from the storage facility. All these elements may seem to connect in a pattern, but they do not in themselves establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. We must remember that in our legal system, every individual is presumed innocent until proven otherwise." His plea for caution and adherence to the principle of reasonable doubt resonated with a segment of the courtroom, though his words were met with skepticism by those who had seen the evidence laid out before them. As the days wore on, the trial became a battle not only over the evidence but over the integrity of the justice system itself. The prosecution's case was bolstered by additional documents that surfaced unexpectedly: emails exchanged between Hollis and several unknown associates, contracts with obscure third-party companies, and confidential memos that hinted at a far-reaching network of corruption. Each new piece of evidence was introduced with a clarity that left little room for misinterpretation. "These documents," stated Prosecutor Morgan, "provide a clear timeline of how Mr. Hollis orchestrated the diversion of funds from local charities. They reveal a systematic plan to conceal his misdeeds and perpetuate a cycle of financial exploitation that has harmed our community for far too long." The courtroom buzzed with an energy that bordered on electric. Jurors listened intently, absorbing the cascade of facts and figures that painted a damning portrait of the accused. The prosecution's case was meticulous, linking the seemingly mundane appearance of a stray dog to a sophisticated web of financial malfeasance. The key, once a mere curiosity, had become the symbol of a conspiracy that extended far beyond the confines of the courtroom. Every exhibit, every testimony, and every line of inquiry contributed to a narrative that left little doubt about the culpability of the defendant. In one of the more dramatic moments of the trial, a security guard from the storage facility, named Marcus Lee, was called to testify. Marcus, whose eyes conveyed the burden of having witnessed irregularities that he had been powerless to stop, recounted the night he discovered a hidden section in one of the facility's storage units. "I was making my rounds when I noticed a door that I'd never seen before," he recalled, his voice subdued yet laden with the gravity of his experience. "It was slightly ajar, and when I pushed it open, I found a small room filled with files and records that didn't belong there. I knew immediately that something was off. I reported it to my supervisor, but by then the evidence had already been tampered with. I can only hope that what you see in these records is the truth of what happened." Marcus's testimony added another layer of depth to the prosecution's case, painting a picture of an institution that had been complicit in concealing the truth. Beyond the confines of the courtroom, the impact of the trial resonated deeply with the community. Local newspapers ran headline after headline about the case, and social media platforms were inundated with discussions about justice, accountability, and the unforeseen role of an animal in unearthing corruption. Community leaders organized town hall meetings, urging transparency and reform in local governance. In coffee shops, diners, and even on late-night radio shows, people debated the implications of the case and what it meant for the future of their town. The trial had become more than just a legal proceeding. It was a turning point, a catalyst for a broader conversation about trust and the abuse of power. Amid these public discussions, the defense maintained its stance that the evidence was merely circumstantial. Charles Bennett, in a series of impassioned exchanges with the prosecution, argued that the focus on the key and the stray dog was a distraction from the lack of concrete proof linking his client directly to the alleged crimes. "We must not allow the allure of dramatic coincidences to cloud our judgment," he insisted during one of his rebuttals. "A stray dog does not indict a man, nor does a misplaced key serve as a ticket to conviction." His arguments, while logically constructed, struggled to dismantle the mounting evidence that had been painstakingly assembled by the prosecution. During a particularly tense session, a technical analyst from the prosecution team was invited to explain the methodology behind the forensic examination of the digital ledger. The analyst detailed how sophisticated software had been used to trace the flow of funds, highlighting anomalies and pinpointing irregular transactions that were inconsistent with ordinary business practices. The analysis was presented with a series of charts and graphs, each illustration reinforcing the conclusion that the financial discrepancies were not random, but deliberately engineered. "The data tells a story of deception," the analyst stated, "one where every transaction has been meticulously crafted to hide the truth. The ledger is a window into the financial misdeeds that have been perpetuated over a long period." His presentation left little doubt in the minds of the jurors about the systematic nature of the embezzlement scheme. In response, the defense team attempted to counter these findings by questioning the reliability of the digital evidence. They argued that the software used for the analysis might have been subject to errors, and they pointed to minor discrepancies in the timestamps and transaction records. However, these objections were systematically dismantled by the prosecution's experts, who provided detailed explanations and corroborative evidence from independent audits. The technical debate, while complex, ultimately reinforced the credibility of the forensic findings. As the trial entered its final phase, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Every new piece of evidence further narrowed the gap between suspicion and conviction. The focus shifted to the personal history of David Hollis, whose public persona had been one of polished professionalism and success. Detailed financial records, witness testimonies, and expert analyses began to weave a narrative that was impossible to ignore. It was revealed that Hollis had maintained multiple offshore accounts, orchestrated secret meetings with individuals whose identities were concealed behind layers of corporate structures, and engaged in transactions that defied legal norms. The evidence pointed to a deliberate attempt to circumvent regulatory oversight and misappropriate funds meant for charitable causes. During a critical day in the trial, a previously undisclosed bank statement was introduced into evidence. The statement detailed a series of transfers that, when traced back, implicated a network of shell companies all linked to Hollis's operations. This document, along with corroborative testimony from a financial consultant who had been hired by the prosecution, provided a damning chronology of events. The consultant explained how the transfers were executed in a manner designed to obscure their true purpose, and how, upon closer scrutiny, each transaction revealed a thread in the tapestry of embezzlement. This bank statement, the consultant noted, is a vital piece of evidence that ties together the disparate elements of this case. It is not an anomaly. It is a deliberate move in a larger strategy to defraud those who trusted Mr. Hollis. The impact of this revelation was profound, as it not only implicated the defendant further, but also underscored the systemic nature of the corruption. Throughout the courtroom sessions, Judge Campbell maintained a rigorous pace, ensuring that every witness was given the opportunity to present their account, while also safeguarding the rights of the accused. Her measured questions during cross-examinations revealed a deep understanding of both legal precedents and the intricacies of financial fraud. At one point, she addressed the jury directly, urging them to consider the evidence impartially and to not be swayed by sensational details. "We are not here to indulge in theatrics," she reminded everyone, "but to determine the truth based on facts and evidence. It is your duty to ensure that justice is served." Her words, delivered with quiet authority, resonated deeply with all those present. Outside the courthouse, the atmosphere remained charged with anticipation. News channels provided live updates, and citizens gathered in groups, discussing the day's developments with fervor. For many, the trial had transcended the boundaries of legal proceedings, becoming a symbol of hope, a belief that no matter how well hidden the truth might be, it would eventually emerge to restore faith in the system. Local community leaders and activists used the momentum to call for greater transparency in public institutions, and several proposals for reform were introduced in city council meetings in the days that followed. Back inside the courtroom, as the trial neared its conclusion, a moment arrived when both sides had presented their final arguments. The prosecution's closing statement was a meticulous summary of every piece of evidence: the stray dog and its key, the documents from the storage facility, the digital ledger, and the series of testimonies that together constructed a coherent narrative of deliberate fraud. "Every element in this case," stated Prosecutor Morgan, "has been scrutinized, examined, and proven to be part of a calculated scheme to misappropriate funds from our community. The key is not just a symbol, it is the tangible proof that led us to uncover this vast network of corruption." In contrast, Charles Bennett's final plea was a passionate appeal to the jurors' sense of fairness. "Do not let dramatic coincidences cloud your judgment," he implored. "Consider the evidence objectively, and remember that a man is innocent until proven guilty. While you have heard a multitude of testimonies and seen complex financial records, the standard of proof must remain beyond a reasonable doubt." His words, though forceful, struggled to counterbalance the weight of the evidence that had been built up over the course of the trial. As the courtroom settled into a heavy silence in anticipation of the jury's deliberation, every person present was acutely aware of the magnitude of the moment. The case was not merely about one individual's transgressions. It was a confrontation with a system that allowed corruption to thrive beneath a veneer of respectability. The evidence, both digital and physical, had converged to form an irrefutable narrative that left little room for alternative interpretations. The tension in the room was almost tangible as jurors filed out to begin their deliberations, their faces etched with the gravity of their responsibility. Every witness's testimony, every document, and every piece of financial data was now weighed in the balance of justice. The hours that followed were filled with a silent intensity as discussions among the jurors continued behind closed doors, the fate of a prominent businessman and the integrity of an entire community resting on their collective judgment. Outside the courthouse, the public waited with bated breath for a resolution. The case had ignited discussions across the nation about accountability, corporate greed, and the mechanisms that allow such schemes to flourish. In homes and offices alike, people debated the implications of the trial, expressing hope that the outcome would signal a new era of transparency and fairness in business practices. As dusk turned to night, the jury returned to the courtroom. Every eye was fixed on the foreman as he prepared to deliver the verdict. The room was filled with an overwhelming mixture of anticipation, relief, and apprehension. Judge Campbell's gaze swept over the assembled crowd, her expression both somber and resolute as she prepared to accept the jury's decision. In a measured tone that carried the weight of a community's collective aspirations, the foreman began his announcement. Each word was deliberate, conveying not just the outcome of the trial but also the broader implications for justice and accountability. The verdict, when finally pronounced, was met with a mix of reactions, from quiet satisfaction among those who had long sought reform to stunned disbelief among those who had doubted the prosecution's case. The sound of the gavel as it struck the bench marked the closing of one chapter and the uncertain dawn of another. Following the verdict, the courtroom slowly emptied, leaving behind echoes of a tumultuous legal battle that had captured the imagination of an entire community. In the days that followed, the media would continue to dissect every detail of the trial, and local leaders would vow to address the systemic issues that had come to light. The impact of the case resonated far beyond the confines of that courtroom, sparking conversations, legislative proposals, and a renewed commitment to transparency in both public and private sectors. The legacy of this trial would endure as a reminder that even the most unexpected events, a stray dog with a tiny rusted key, could illuminate the darkest corners of deceit and force a reckoning with corruption. The journey toward justice was long and fraught with challenges, but the determination of those who sought the truth remained unyielding. In the wake of this historic event, the community emerged stronger, more vigilant, and more united in its resolve to ensure that accountability prevailed. In the days following the long-awaited verdict, the town seemed to pause in collective reflection as the full ramifications of the trial rippled through every layer of society. The courtroom, now empty of its charged atmosphere and echoing with memories of intense deliberation, had become a symbol of transformation. The judgment rendered against David Hollis sent shockwaves far beyond the confines of the legal arena, reshaping public opinion and prompting immediate calls for reform. Across the city, conversations in living rooms, coffee shops, and city council meetings turned from disbelief to determination, as citizens demanded that the lessons learned from this case be translated into lasting change. The fallout from the verdict was immediate and profound. Local news channels broadcast detailed analyses of the case, dissecting every piece of evidence, from the stray dog and its mysterious key to the intricate network of financial fraud that had been painstakingly uncovered. Social media buzzed with hashtags calling for transparency, justice, and accountability. Ordinary citizens, inspired by the courage of those who had stepped forward to reveal the truth, organized peaceful demonstrations, calling for stricter oversight of corporate practices and greater protection for whistleblowers. Community leaders, once reluctant to challenge the established order, found a renewed sense of purpose, joining forces with reform-minded activists to draft proposals aimed at preventing future abuses of power. In the immediate aftermath, the offices of the district attorney and local government buzzed with activity as inquiries were launched into the deeper networks that had enabled the embezzlement scheme. Investigators revisited old files and re-examined transactions, uncovering a web of interlocking shell companies, offshore accounts, and clandestine meetings that extended well beyond the borders of the town. Task forces were assembled, bringing together experts from financial oversight bodies, law enforcement, and independent audit firms. Their mission was clear: to ensure that every thread of corruption was pulled and every illicit connection severed. As a result, several high-ranking officials and business associates of Hollis were called in for questioning, and a series of raids were executed on additional storage facilities suspected of housing more evidence of the fraudulent network. Amid the legal and administrative whirlwind, the human side of the case became increasingly visible. Families and community members who had once trusted the charitable organizations defrauded by Hollis began to find solace in the emerging promise of accountability. Local churches, civic groups, and non-profit organizations hosted community forums where people could express their pain, share their experiences, and discuss ways to rebuild trust. A series of town hall meetings, held in local community centers, became venues where citizens could directly question officials about the reforms that were being proposed and the measures that would be taken to ensure that such a breach of trust would never happen again. The impact of the trial was not confined to the immediate community. Across the state, legislators took notice of the public outcry and the compelling evidence that had emerged from the proceedings. In a series of emergency legislative sessions, proposals were drafted to tighten financial regulations and to mandate greater transparency in corporate governance. Committees were formed to review the existing laws governing storage facilities and financial disclosures, and hearings were scheduled where experts, including forensic accountants and legal scholars, testified about the vulnerabilities that had been exploited by Hollis and his associates. The momentum was palpable. What began as a single trial had now evolved into a statewide movement for change. Within the courtroom's walls, the echoes of the final verdict continued to reverberate long after the benches had emptied. Judge Martha Campbell, whose measured demeanor had steered the trial with unwavering fairness, retreated to a private office to reflect on the profound responsibility that had been bestowed upon her. In quiet moments, she reviewed the case files and personal testimonies, pondering the human cost of corruption and the delicate balance between justice and mercy. Her reflections led her to consider the broader implications of the verdict. A reminder that the legal system must always be vigilant, lest the forces of greed and malfeasance creep in undetected. The experience reinforced her commitment to uphold the law and to mentor younger judges, ensuring that the lessons learned would continue to influence the judiciary for generations to come. For Prosecutor Elaine Morgan, the victory was bittersweet. Having dedicated countless hours to piecing together evidence and challenging entrenched interests, she felt both relief and the weight of responsibility. In her modest office filled with case files and digital monitors, she prepared a comprehensive report outlining the systemic failures that had allowed the embezzlement to occur. Her report detailed the intricate financial transactions, the deliberate obfuscation of records, and the critical role played by that stray dog's inexplicable appearance. More importantly, it included recommendations for policy reforms and safeguards against future corruption. Her meticulous work soon attracted the attention of regional legal associations and financial oversight agencies, leading to invitations to speak at conferences and contribute to national policy debates on corporate accountability. Charles Bennett, the defense attorney who had staunchly argued for his client's innocence until the overwhelming evidence left him with no alternative, retreated into a period of introspection following the verdict. His once impassioned arguments now echoed in his memory as he navigated the uncertain aftermath of a high-profile case that had captured the nation's attention. In private interviews and legal symposiums that followed, Bennett acknowledged the complexity of the case and the imperative that every legal practitioner must confront uncomfortable truths. His reflections were tinged with regret over a system that sometimes allowed the powerful to manipulate outcomes, and he vowed to work towards reforms that would ensure a more balanced approach to justice in the future. Beyond the legal sphere, the trial's resolution ignited a cultural transformation within the community. Local artists, writers, and filmmakers found inspiration in the dramatic sequence of events, creating works that celebrated the triumph of truth over deception. Murals depicting the stray dog with its rusted key began to appear on the walls of community centers and public buildings, symbolizing the idea that even the most unexpected forces can serve as catalysts for change. Independent theaters staged plays and documentaries chronicling the trial, drawing audiences who were eager to understand how a single act of chance had exposed a sprawling network of corruption. In schools, educators incorporated the case into curricula on civic responsibility and ethics, sparking discussions among students about the importance of integrity and accountability in public life. As the weeks turned into months, a series of reforms began to materialize at both the local and state levels. New regulations mandated more rigorous audits of financial transactions, especially those involving charitable organizations and public funds. A dedicated oversight committee was established to monitor the operations of storage facilities and to ensure that no similar breaches of trust could occur in the future. Additionally, whistleblower protection laws were strengthened, providing greater security and incentives for those who dared to expose wrongdoing. These reforms were met with cautious optimism by community members, many of whom had long harbored a sense of disillusionment with the systems meant to protect them. The changes were not merely administrative adjustments, but signified a deeper, more profound shift in the public's relationship with authority. In the midst of these reforms, a quiet celebration of justice took place in an unexpected venue, a local park where citizens gathered for an impromptu memorial service honoring the courage of those who had stood up against corruption. Lanterns were lit and messages of hope were shared, symbolizing the collective desire for a future where truth would always prevail. Families, friends, and even former skeptics embraced one another, united by the conviction that their community had emerged stronger from the crucible of the trial. This moment of communal solidarity was a powerful reminder that justice was not solely the domain of the courtroom, but a living, breathing force nurtured by the collective spirit of the people. Insucks. The days that followed, follow-up investigations revealed further details that enriched the understanding of the broader network of fraud. Among the newly uncovered evidence were records of covert meetings held in upscale restaurants and discreet office buildings, where high-level executives and financial brokers had discussed strategies to evade regulatory scrutiny. These revelations prompted additional legal actions and led to a series of civil lawsuits against several corporate entities implicated in the scandal. The ensuing legal battles added layers of complexity to the story, but they also reinforced the principle that no one was above the law. As each layer was peeled back, the case transformed into a comprehensive exposé of systemic corruption that reached into the heart of the nation's financial practices. Public trust, once eroded by years of secrecy and misconduct, began its slow and steady recovery. Trust-building initiatives were launched by local governments, emphasizing transparency and community engagement. Town halls and open forums became regular occurrences, with officials providing detailed accounts of budget allocations, policy changes, and progress reports on the reforms implemented in the wake of the trial. These initiatives, though modest in scale, signified a commitment to restoring faith in public institutions. Citizens were encouraged to participate actively in the oversight processes, and feedback mechanisms were established to ensure that the voices of everyday people were heard in the halls of power. At the national level, the case of David Hollis and the stray dog with the rusted key became a landmark reference point in discussions on corporate governance and financial accountability. Prominent figures in the media, academia, and politics cited the trial as evidence of the urgent need for more robust checks and balances in financial systems. Legislative proposals inspired by the case gained traction in Congress, where bipartisan support emerged for measures aimed at curbing financial malfeasance and protecting public funds. The case served as a cautionary tale for business leaders, who now faced increased scrutiny and higher standards of transparency in their operations. The transformation was not limited to policy and legal frameworks. It also resonated on a deeply personal level with many who had witnessed the trial. Survivors of financial scams and victims of corporate fraud found solace in the fact that the justice system had, at long last, delivered a measure of retribution. Community support groups sprang up, offering counseling and financial advice to those affected by similar schemes. These grassroots efforts, rooted in empathy and mutual support, contributed to a broader cultural shift that placed a premium on ethical behavior and accountability. The legacy of the trial was etched into the collective memory of the town, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, persistence and truth could prevail. As the final chapters of this saga were written, the enduring impact of the case continued to unfold in unexpected ways. A renowned investigative journalist, inspired by the dramatic events, embarked on a nationwide series of reports that delved into the underbelly of financial corruption. His work, which combined meticulous research with compelling storytelling, brought further attention to cases that had long been hidden from public view. Through interviews, document analyses, and on-the-ground reporting, he connected disparate threads of fraud and exposed additional networks of deceit. His series earned widespread acclaim and served as a catalyst for further investigations, prompting regulatory agencies to re-examine long-standing practices and pursue justice against other corrupt entities. In the months that followed, annual, commemorative events were organized to honor the achievements of the trial and the subsequent reforms. These events, attended by legal experts, reform advocates, and community members, celebrated the courage it took to challenge a system rife with complacency and corruption. Awards and recognitions were established for individuals and organizations that played pivotal roles in uncovering the truth and fostering change. The stray dog, affectionately remembered as the unlikely messenger of justice, became an emblem of hope, a reminder that sometimes the most profound signals come from the most unexpected sources. even as the dust settled and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The legacy of the trial continued to inform the local narrative. Educational programs were developed in partnership with universities and community centers, focusing on ethics in business, legal responsibility, and the importance of civic participation. Workshops and seminars were held to empower citizens with the knowledge and tools needed to hold institutions accountable. Over time, these initiatives bore fruit, cultivating a generation that was not only better informed about their rights, but also more vigilant in safeguarding the principles of transparency and justice. The reverberations of this trial eventually reached the highest echelons of the nation's legal and political systems. Renowned law schools integrated the case study into their curricula, inviting students to analyze the intricate interplay of legal, financial, and ethical challenges that it embodied. Public debates and academic conferences centered on the case, highlighted its relevance as a turning point, a moment when the collective voice of the people demanded accountability and when the rule of law asserted its primacy over unchecked power. The case was discussed not merely as an isolated incident, but as a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle to balance economic progress with ethical governance. In the quiet hours of reflection that followed the public and institutional upheaval, the enduring truth became evident. Justice is not a static endpoint, but a continuous journey marked by vigilance, reform, and the unwavering courage of those who dare to speak out. The trial had unveiled a hidden world of deception, but it had also ignited a movement that would continue to challenge corruption, uphold transparency, and ensure that the promise of justice remained alive in every corner of society. It was a legacy built not on the actions of one man, but on the collective resolve of a community united in its determination to forge a better, more accountable future. As the days turned into years, the changes initiated in the wake of the trial took on a life of their own. The financial reforms, strengthened oversight, and enhanced public participation gradually became the norm, reshaping the landscape of business and governance. The case of David Hollis and the mysterious key had transformed from a scandal into a powerful lesson, a lesson in the importance of vigilance, the need for systemic accountability, and the unexpected ways in which truth can emerge to light the path toward justice. With each passing day, the spirit of reform continued to thrive. Community leaders maintained open channels with government officials, ensuring that the reforms were implemented effectively and that any deviations from ethical practices were met with swift action. The legacy of the trial remained a constant reminder that no individual or institution was infallible, and that only through collective effort and unwavering commitment could the cycle of corruption be broken for good. Today, the story endures as a beacon of hope and a call to action, a reminder that even in a world where deception may hide behind the guise of respectability, the forces of truth and accountability are stronger than any shadow. The echoes of that fateful trial continue to inspire change, a continuous testament to the power of unity, perseverance, and the belief that justice, once awakened, can transform an entire community. In the wake of the trial's dramatic conclusion and the ensuing cascade of reforms, life in the town entered a phase of profound transformation and renewal. As the courtroom lights dimmed and the final echoes of the verdict faded, the community emerged from a long period of uncertainty into a new era defined by accountability, reform, and hope. The ripple effects of that historic day spread far beyond legal boundaries, ushering in tangible changes in governance, public engagement, and the spirit of civic responsibility. The judicial system, once criticized for its opaque processes, began to adopt measures that promised greater transparency and fairness. The success of the investigation into David Hollis's embezzlement and the unexpected role played by a stray dog with a rusted key catalyzed a wave of legal and procedural reforms. Government officials, legal scholars, and activists united to draft new guidelines that emphasize digital record-keeping, improved chain-of-custody protocols for evidence, and stricter oversight of private storage facilities. These changes were implemented not only to prevent future abuses, but also to restore public trust in institutions that had long been taken for granted. In the months that followed, local government held a series of public forums where citizens were encouraged to voice their concerns and offer suggestions for further improvement. These meetings, held in town halls, community centers, and even outdoor spaces under the open sky, fostered an environment of collaboration and mutual respect. People from all walks of life, students, business owners, retirees, and civic activists, gathered to discuss the reforms, share personal experiences, and propose additional measures that could strengthen the social contract between the authorities and the community. It was an unprecedented moment of unity, as everyone recognized that the battle against corruption was not confined to the courtroom, but was a collective responsibility that required the engagement of every citizen. As the legal reforms began to take shape, the town's financial institutions also underwent a transformation. A new regulatory body was established with the mandate to monitor and audit the activities of companies, particularly those handling public funds and charitable donations. Independent auditors were brought in to scrutinize financial records with a fine-tooth comb, ensuring that every transaction was transparent and above reproach. Training programs were launched for financial professionals, emphasizing ethical practices and the importance of integrity in every aspect of business. The lessons learned from the Hollis case became a cornerstone in the curriculum of local business schools, and seminars on corporate governance and ethical management quickly gained popularity among professionals eager to rebuild trust with the public. Within the community, the effects of the trial resonated deeply on a personal level. Families who had once felt betrayed by the misuse of funds channeled their disappointment into proactive endeavors. Volunteer groups were formed to help rebuild local charities that had suffered under the weight of financial mismanagement. Community centers organized workshops and counseling sessions for those affected by the scandal, offering both emotional support and practical advice on financial literacy and legal rights. These grassroots initiatives played a crucial role in healing the wounds inflicted by the corruption, as neighbors and friends came together to ensure that no one would ever again be left vulnerable to the machinations of a deceitful few. Among those who experienced a personal transformation was Judge Martha Campbell. In the quiet hours after the trial, she dedicated herself to mentoring young jurists and law students, sharing her insights on justice, accountability, and the delicate balance between empathy and strict adherence to the law. In a series of public lectures and private seminars, she recounted her experiences during the trial and emphasized the importance of remaining vigilant against corruption in all its forms. Her commitment to reform extended to drafting proposals for judicial training programs that stressed the ethical responsibilities of those entrusted with upholding the law. Her efforts not only elevated the standard of justice in the local courts, but also inspired a new generation of legal professionals to pursue truth relentlessly, regardless of the obstacles. Prosecutor Elaine Morgan, whose determined investigation had been instrumental in exposing the depths of the financial fraud, found herself at the forefront of a broader movement for systemic change. Invited to speak at national conferences and legislative hearings, she detailed the meticulous process that had led to the unraveling of the embezzlement scheme. Her testimony, grounded in both technical expertise and a deep sense of moral purpose, resonated with audiences across the country. Elaine emphasized that the key discovered on that stray dog was not merely a physical object, but a powerful symbol of how even the most unexpected events could spark a chain reaction, leading to justice. In her subsequent work, she collaborated with regulatory agencies to develop new investigative protocols that integrated digital forensics with traditional methods, ensuring that future cases of financial misconduct could be detected and addressed more swiftly. Charles Bennett, the defense attorney who had once argued vehemently for his client's innocence, underwent a period of introspection that reshaped his professional outlook. Confronted with the undeniable weight of evidence and the public's demand for accountability, he reassessed his approach to legal defense. In the months that followed, Bennett began advocating for reforms within the legal community, stressing the importance of ethical advocacy and the responsibility of lawyers to balance zealous representation with an unwavering commitment to truth. His transformation was marked by a series of public statements and articles that called for greater transparency in legal proceedings and a more rigorous standard for evidence in cases involving financial crimes. Bennett's journey from a staunch defender of a controversial figure to a proponent of systemic reform served as a powerful reminder that even within the adversarial system, there was room for growth and change. the community itself became a beacon of resilience and progress. Artists and writers captured the essence of the town's transformation through murals, novels, and documentaries that chronicled the tumultuous yet ultimately redemptive journey of the people. One particularly moving mural, painted on the side of a community center, depicted a stray dog with a gleaming key in its collar, a symbol of hope emerging from chaos. This artwork, along with many others scattered throughout the town, served as a daily reminder that justice, though sometimes obscured by darkness, always had the power to illuminate the path forward. Local filmmakers produced a series of short films that explored the human stories behind the headlines. The quiet courage of a witness who risked everything to speak the truth, the tireless efforts of a community rallying for change, and the personal sacrifices made by those who believed in a better future. Educational institutions embraced the trial as a case study in ethics, governance, and the power of community action. Universities and high schools incorporated discussions on corporate responsibility and the importance of civic engagement into their curricula. Students participated in debates, wrote research papers, and even organized mock trials to better understand the complexities of the legal system. This academic focus not only enriched the educational experience, but also empowered young people to become active participants in shaping a just society. Scholarships and grants were established in honor of key figures from the trial, ensuring that future generations would continue to learn from and build upon the lessons of the past. As reforms solidified into new norms, the town began to experience a renaissance of sorts. Public spaces were revitalized with community gardens, local businesses flourished under the renewed trust of the people, and civic pride was restored. The legacy of the trial permeated every facet of daily life. Citizens who had once felt marginalized now took pride in their collective ability to affect change. Community events celebrating local culture and history became regular occurrences, and a spirit of optimism replaced the lingering cynicism that had once pervaded public discourse. New partnerships formed between local government, private enterprises, and non-profit organizations, each committed to creating an environment where ethical practices were the standard and not the exception. Over time, the legal and financial reforms initiated in the aftermath of the trial began to yield measurable improvements. Incidents of financial fraud decreased significantly as stricter monitoring and enforcement mechanisms took root. Transparency reports became a regular feature of local government, and public trust in elected officials saw a steady rise. Legislative bodies, inspired by the success of the reforms, passed additional laws aimed at curbing corruption across multiple sectors. These legislative victories, though hard-won, underscored a broader cultural shift, one in which accountability was celebrated and the misuse of power was met with swift, decisive action. Amid this era of change, a series of celebratory events marked the anniversary of the trial's conclusion. The town organized a week-long festival that combined legal symposiums, cultural performances, art exhibitions, and community feasts. Panels of experts discussed the case and its implications, while local artists showcased works that captured the transformative journey of the community. These events not only honored the struggle for justice but also highlighted the progress made since that fateful day. The festival became an annual tradition, a reminder that every challenge, no matter how formidable, could ultimately give way to renewal and hope. In one memorable ceremony held in the town's Central Park, leaders from the legal, financial, and civic sectors gathered to unveil a monument dedicated to the spirit of accountability and reform. The monument, an elegant structure featuring a stylized key intertwined with images of everyday people, symbolized the collective effort that had brought about meaningful change. In his brief address at the unveiling, a respected community elder spoke of the long journey from despair to hope, emphasizing that the lessons learned were not confined to the past, but would continue to guide the community into the future. The monument stood as a permanent testament to the power of unity, the resilience of the human spirit, and the belief that justice, once pursued with unwavering determination, would always prevail. As the years turned into a new chapter of sustained progress, the once divided community found itself united by a common purpose. New civic projects emerged, focusing on strengthening infrastructure, enhancing public services, and creating opportunities for youth empowerment. Local government, buoyed by the support of an engaged citizenry, invested in state-of-the-art technologies to monitor public finances and streamline administrative processes. These initiatives not only modernized the governance of the town, but also served as a model for neighboring communities grappling with similar challenges. The case that had once rocked the foundations of trust became a catalyst for a broader movement dedicated to systemic improvement, with other towns and cities looking to adopt similar reforms. Throughout this period of transformation, stories of personal redemption and resilience abounded. Many who had once been reluctant to participate in civic life found themselves stepping forward to contribute to the community's revitalization. Volunteers organized literacy programs, job training sessions, and neighborhood improvement projects. Former skeptics became enthusiastic advocates for transparency and ethical governance, and local businesses began to adopt practices that prioritized social responsibility alongside profit. The pervasive sense of optimism was reflected in the smiles of children playing in rejuvenated parks, the confident strides of young professionals, and the heartfelt gratitude expressed by community members who had seen their lives improved by the sustained efforts of their leaders. The evolution of the town's civic landscape reached its zenith when a groundbreaking initiative was launched to create an independent commission dedicated to combating corruption and promoting accountability across all levels of government. This commission, composed of experts from diverse fields such as law, finance, technology, and sociology, was tasked with continuous monitoring of public institutions and ensuring that the lessons of the past remained firmly embedded in everyday practices. Their work involved regular audits, public reporting, and the implementation of corrective measures whenever discrepancies were detected. The establishment of the commission was hailed as a victory for democracy and transparency, and its success quickly became a benchmark for other regions striving for similar reforms. As the community continued to evolve, personal stories of hope and triumph intertwined with the larger narrative of institutional change. Among these was the journey of a young woman named Alicia Turner, whose determination to overcome adversity led her to become a leading advocate for financial literacy in her community. Growing up in a family that had suffered the consequences of financial mismanagement, Alicia had witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of corruption. Inspired by the trial and the subsequent reforms, she dedicated herself to educating others on how to safeguard their finances and assert their rights. Through workshops, community outreach programs, and partnerships with local schools, Alicia became a symbol of the transformative power of knowledge and the importance of empowerment. Her efforts not only helped individuals rebuild their lives, but also strengthened the collective resolve of the community to stand up against injustice. In another poignant chapter of the community's ongoing story, a retired accountant named Samuel Rodriguez, who had once been part of the system that enabled fraudulent practices, embraced a new role as a whistleblower and reform advocate. Samuel's confession of past complicity, delivered in a series of heartfelt interviews and public forums, resonated deeply with those who had suffered due to financial misconduct. His willingness to confront his past and work toward restitution and reform helped mend fractured trust and underscored the idea that change was possible, even for those who had once contributed to the system's failures. Samuel's journey was celebrated as a powerful example of redemption and the belief that every individual, regardless of their past actions, could contribute to a more just and transparent future. The culmination of these efforts was not marked by a single event, but by a gradual and sustained evolution that touched every facet of community life. Public spaces that had once been symbols of neglect were transformed into vibrant centers of activity and cultural expression. Local festivals, art shows, and civic celebrations became regular reminders of the community's shared commitment to progress. A renewed sense of purpose permeated every conversation, every policy discussion, and every act of civic engagement. The legacy of the trial, encapsulated in the memory of a stray dog and a rusted key, was now woven into the very fabric of the town's identity, a legacy of vigilance, reform, and enduring hope. As twilight gave way to a peaceful night, the town continued its journey toward an even brighter future. With the establishment of robust institutions, a vigilant citizenry, and leaders committed to the highest ethical standards, The community had not only overcome the challenges of the past, but had set a course for sustained progress. The transformation was both profound and far-reaching, a testament to the power of collective action and the unwavering belief that every obstacle, no matter how formidable, could be overcome when truth and justice were at the helm. In the quiet moments that followed the bustling days of reform, there emerged a palpable sense of calm and fulfillment. The scars of past injustices had not been forgotten, but they had given way to a determination to build a future founded on integrity, compassion, and transparency. Every citizen, from the youngest student to the eldest elder, contributed to this shared vision, knowing that the challenges of yesterday had paved the way for the promise of tomorrow. The story of the trial and its aftermath was not merely a chapter in the town's history. It had become a guiding light for all who believed in the transformative power of justice. As the community embraced this new dawn, the legacy of the stray dog and its unexpected key remained a constant reminder that even the smallest acts could ignite monumental change. The symbol of hope, once dismissed as a mere oddity, had become a rallying cry for truth and accountability. It stood as proof that sometimes the universe has a way of delivering the precise catalyst needed to challenge entrenched power and spark a movement that transcends individual lives, touching the hearts and minds of an entire people. Now, as the sun rose on a promising new day, the town looked forward with a renewed sense of purpose. The reforms that had taken root were beginning to bear fruit in every aspect of public life, and the bonds of trust between citizens and their leaders were stronger than ever. The journey toward a more just and equitable society was ongoing, but the foundation had been laid. The community was ready to face the future, armed with the knowledge that its collective efforts could overcome any challenge, that every voice mattered, and that every act of courage contributed to the enduring triumph of truth. In this vibrant era of renewal, every individual became a steward of progress, a guardian of the principles that had been hard-won through struggle and perseverance. The town's transformation was not just a story of legal victory. It was a story of human resilience, of the belief that when people come together, they can create a future where justice, fairness, and hope are not merely aspirations, but lived realities. And as the community moved forward, the lessons of the past served as both a cautionary tale and a beacon of inspiration for all who dared to dream of a better world. In the years to come, the town would continue to evolve and innovate, setting examples that reached far beyond its borders. The collaborative spirit that had emerged in the aftermath of the trial spurred new ideas in governance, education, and community development. Local entrepreneurs, inspired by the collective drive for improvement, launched initiatives that not only revitalized the economy, but also fostered sustainable practices and social responsibility. These endeavors, ranging from green energy projects to community-supported agriculture and innovative technology hubs, transformed the town into a model of modern civic engagement and progressive change. A generation of young leaders, nurtured by the transformative experiences of their community, stepped forward to carry the torch of reform into the future. They embraced roles in government, education, and business, with a clear understanding that the struggle for justice was an ongoing journey. Their vision was one of inclusivity, innovation, and unwavering commitment to the values that had emerged from the trials of the past. In classrooms, boardrooms, and town hall meetings, they championed initiatives that emphasized ethical practices, community welfare, and the responsible stewardship of resources. Their leadership promised a legacy that would honor the past while boldly shaping the future. The town's story, marked by hardship and eventual triumph, resonated as a powerful narrative of transformation, a narrative that inspired other communities facing similar challenges. Delegations from neighboring regions visited to learn about the reforms and to witness firsthand the remarkable turnaround that had been achieved. Exchanges of ideas, collaborative projects, and regional conferences soon followed as the town's journey became a case study in resilience, transparency, and the power of collective action. Through these interactions, the spirit of reform spread, igniting change in places that had long struggled with corruption and apathy. As the final chapter of this saga drew to a close, a lasting sense of accomplishment filled the hearts of all who had witnessed the evolution of their community. The legal battle that had once defined the town's identity was now replaced by a vibrant culture of accountability and progress. Every street corner, every public space, and every gathering echoed with the promise of a future built on the foundations of trust, hard work, and an unyielding commitment to doing what was right. In this new dawn, where challenges still existed but hope prevailed, the town stood united as a beacon of what could be achieved when individuals, institutions, and the collective spirit of a community worked together for a common purpose. The legacy of that fateful trial, born from an unlikely sequence of events involving a stray dog and a rusted key, had blossomed into a movement that transformed lives, redefined governance, and rekindled the belief that justice, in its truest form, was a force that could shape a better, more equitable tomorrow. And so, as the sun ascended over a town reborn, its rays illuminated not only the physical structures that had been restored, but also the intangible bonds of community, trust, and hope. The journey toward a more just society continued, fueled by the lessons of the past and the collective determination to forge a future where every voice was heard and every injustice was met with a resounding call for accountability. In that bright new day, the community stepped forward with confidence, united by the conviction that the power of truth, integrity, and unity could overcome any darkness and usher in an era of lasting peace and prosperity.